To me, there's quite a big difference between dreams and goals. Um, Dreams to me are end game. They're where I want to end up. They're where I aspire to be. Um, Goals are the things that I set daily and weekly and monthly to help me attain those dreams, right? So like my dream is to be in the top 1% of all podcasts of all streamers. My goals are the things that I'm going to achieve along the way to my dream. In a dream, anything is possible. The floor can turn into liquid. You can fall through it, and then you realize that you're actually sitting in outer space now, right? Just for example, like dreams are so untethered by the constructs of reality and by laws of physics and all those different things. So people tend to like if they have a dream about being successful or their end game goal is doing that and having these things, but then they often equate it to well it's not possible because it was a dream, right? It's like well since it originated in a dream, since it started here, I know that it's not true and it can't happen. So I have to focus on reality. And it's like at what point do you try to make your dreams a reality? At what point do you not realize that, like, okay, although I don't believe that my floor can randomly turn into liquid and I'll fall through it and I'll be floating in outer space, to what point can I not build my wealth big enough that I have an indoor pool? That when I go underground, it's actually painted to look like the stars with light shining through it. So when I'm underwater, it actually looks like the universe, right? And it's like if you try to look at if you untether your dreams from reality and you focus and you just you try to take away the physical bounds, and then that's when you start realizing there's a lot more possibilities, right? If you're looking at a house and you're like the only way in is through the front door, but what if it's locked? Now you can never get into that house. But if you're me, you're like there's 37 windows and there's even a basement entrance, there's a wall right there, do I have something I can cut through the wall with? You know what I mean? Like that box will not keep me out if I truly want to get in. A locked door is not enough.
So, question for you: like, if you, I don't know, let's see, if you dreamt something like insane, like absolutely crazy, and you wake up and you really want it, right? Because it's tied to that emotion at that point. How would you kind of handle it? I guess is the best question. Like, let's see, how do I word that? How would you go about that? Would you take it for just that dream and then move past it, or would you think more of it and try to think like, okay, how can I actually make that possible?
Well, that all depends on like where I'm at in life, right?
Okay.
Because right now, in general, like I personally, I'm a horrible person to ask because I don't really dream a lot.
Okay.
I've had people try to argue with me. Oh, you dream, you just don't remember it. I'm telling you right now, I'm not dreaming. If I don't remember it, it's the same as not dreaming. I've like there's a difference between waking up and being like oh like when you first wake up you can typically remember your dream, at least aspects of it, when you
Yeah.
first wake up, and then throughout the day those details they kind of
Right. It
flutter
kind of.
off into nothingness, you know what I mean? But when
Yeah.
I wake up, if I try to recall any dream, I have nothing.
Okay.
Nothing. You know what I mean? So I don't believe I dream because you know what I mean? I used to, and I actually think a big reason why I don't dream as much anymore is because of the amount that I smoke. There's been studies done that are directly
Yeah.
correlate not dreaming with smoking, and then once you stop smoking, studies have proven that you are more likely to start dreaming again. You know what
Yeah.
I
It
mean?
does this weird thing of putting in like a deeper sleep or something. I don't know exactly what it
Right.
is. Yeah.
Exactly. So like for
Okay.
me, it's kind of hard for me to think about like what I would do. But in general, like when I wake up from a dream, because they do happen every once in a while. You know what I mean? Like I actually did have a dream earlier on this week. Um, and it was actually super mild. I was just sitting on a boat fishing. That's all I remember about my dream. But I was just sitting there fishing. You know what I mean? So like I've low key been wanting to go fishing now.
Right.
I don't have a fishing license. I
That's
don't have a
interesting.
boat. I don't have a pole. But now I just have this like not unrealistic, but I have an urge to go fishing, even though like I
Yeah.
haven't been fishing since I was like 13 years old. You know what I mean? So it's like taking that dream and something that is very obtainable as far as if I want to go fishing, I know people with poles. Going out, and I can fucking push. I have so much fishing line in my bug out bag. I can make a fishing pole out of a stick. Okay, I have
Yeah.
everything I need to do it. You know what I mean? Am I saying it'll be more effective than a rod and reel? Absolutely not. But could I go fishing with it? Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and you made a really interesting point. You had said because like I had mentioned how I think oftentimes when we have a dream while we're sleeping, because our chemicals and whatever is going on in our brains, we tend to associate feelings with those dreams as if we were really experiencing them. And so then when we wake up, we have those same feelings associated, and then we either want that or we don't want it, or we have like a fear for it for no reason, or we, you know what I mean? And so you have like a love for something even though it's like it doesn't make any sense. And like you just brought up, like you had a dream that you went fishing and now you randomly want to go fishing. And I think that's really neat. It's almost like, and this is kind of going on a different tangent, but I mean, really, like, let's see where it goes. Is the idea how when you have a dream and then you end up wanting to do it, I wonder if that's to a point your subconscious telling you what might be good for you, and not necessarily specifically what it is, but something about it or something that you would obtain from doing it, that your subconscious is telling you like, hey, this would be, you know what I mean?
I think it's actually a really interesting point because it's like going on to our dreams and what we think were obtainable and what we're apprehensive about and things, right? Like, so thinking about a dream, it's crazy to think about it like this as far as things that we think are unobtainable, right? So I had a dream about going fishing. And even though I've been like, it's been in the back of my head and I've been thinking about wanting to go fishing, I've done absolutely nothing to try to set it up so I can go fishing.
Right.
It's almost like I disregard it more
Because it's a
because it was a
dream.
dream. It wasn't a thought that I had when I was awake. It wasn't something that I talked with my queen about and I was like, hey, I want to go fishing with you today. It was
Right.
a dream that, and it's like, okay, well, so now when I'm telling myself I want to go fishing, it's almost like I'm fighting that because I'm like, well, it was a dream. So like, do I want to go fishing or is that just me wanting to recreate my dream?
And is there a difference?
Right. Because I mean, realistically, like everything in life, you yourself is your brain, right? It's how you
Right.
take all your experiences in life and how you turn them and what it does to you, and that's what forms you as a person.
Right.
So it's
Yeah, you,
like
yep.
with dreams, who are like I could argue that dreams are that you're still experiencing them because your mind is still experiencing it, whether it's your reality or it's your physical body experiencing it or not, your mind is. And if you are your mind, then wouldn't it stand to make sense that you were in fact in that dream? Not necessarily that it's real
It's
in the
real
sense of
just
that we know real, but how is it not real to you? How is it not real inside your own head? You know what I
right.
mean?
And I would almost even challenge that, like you said, the idea that like, okay, so like what do we know to be real, right? Like, well, we know it's real if more than just me thinks it's real, right? So like if we both see a color for red, chances are we're going to be in agreement that that's red more likely. If I think it's red and you think it's blue, then now it's up for debate, and it's probably not a fact so much or real so much as if, you know what I mean? So like reality in a sense is like if multiple people can see it. And so because I couldn't see that dream in the same way that you did, now you're going to be more likely to think like, oh, well, it's not real because like when I wake up, this is real. But like real is really just what you're seeing at the time. It's what you collectively imagine to be true. And so like,
That's why if you talk to someone about something that happened in a current event or something, you can talk to three people about a like we'll say someone robbing a store, and all three people will have a different account of what
right.
happened. You know what I mean? And that's why
Yeah.
I've always said there's three sides to a story. Well, one person says what the other person says, and then the truth.
Yeah. And so in a sense, like that dream, it almost doesn't even matter if you think it's real or not, or that it's not what you see to be real, right? Like what you wake up and see. It doesn't mean that because this is more often that this isn't at all. And it's kind of neat because like in a sense then those dreams should be valued to teach you just as much as this conversation, or this like what's going to happen after your conversation, like being
Well, to me,
awake.
it's the same idea as like learning from your parents, right? Like I didn't have to live my dad's life in order to learn what he had to teach me.
Right.
So to me the same concept stands. Why do I have to actually physically go through it in order to learn it? If you dream about it and you learn the lesson and you actually try to take
Yeah.
your dream for what it might be trying to tell you. I'm not saying that every dream is going to have this super hidden deep meaning and
Sure.
you know what I mean, but I do feel that that you have to give your dreams a little bit more credit than we do,
Yeah.
because in a way they are still you. You're not gonna dream like, I don't know, you're not gonna dream of something that's not you.
Right, your mind's going to fabricate it, and like whether you're disconnected from that part of your mind or not, like you are still, like you said, a part of that. That is you. You are it. And it's like there's a quote I heard, and I mean it's still debatable, of course, but it's the idea that you live inside your thoughts, and your thoughts make you, and there's no escaping your thoughts, right? Like you're always there no matter what you do. And so it's kind of a really interesting thing, is like, does your mind dictate you, or do you dictate your mind? And as a result, do you make your dreams based on your experiences and kind of like what you're thinking before you go to bed, or does your mind simply tell you and give you these realities and things, like you said, to teach you, to give you something in return, even if it's not always a lesson? Maybe it's just an emotion or a thought.
I am trying to add you to my host list real quick. I just realized that I'm not hosting this, and I could definitely be doing that.
Gotcha.
Forgot that's a thing on here. I don't even have you on my host list at all. Like that.
Oh, so when they go to your thing, it'll bring you to me.
It'll show,
Or to
right,
us.
it'll show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And on top of that, I think Nami's on the counter knocking shit over.
Yeah, I can edit out whatever, like this right here. So if you need to go do that real quick, that's
perfect.
I
Well,
can
I
edit
actually
that
think
out.
I just finished. I added you to my list, so now it should automatically host us, as long as I'm not automatically hosting someone else. And I am hosting ThinkAside. Boom, you're
Cool.
good.
Perfect.
Sorry about that.
All good. Yeah.
First
So
time, speed runs, got to learn.
yeah, well, and that's the thing, is like we're gonna have hiccups. We're gonna have things that we just practice up and get better at, and the flow of things and the way to structure our conversations. Like, but no, I like where this is going. I really like the idea of, does your brain in a sense control who you are, or do you control your brain? Like going with the thought and the dream
I
idea.
think it's both. I
Yeah.
think it's
I think so.
absolutely both, because if you were to try to look at it like if we go to extremes of either one of the spectrums, right? It's like, well, if your brain just controls you, then how is anybody successful? How is anybody doing anything? And how are we all not kind of doing the same thing? You know what I mean?
Unless they're different brains.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, I think it'd kind of be like a processor, right? Like you take a bunch of different processors. They could all be different, but overall they all do the same thing.
Yeah,
know what
they're
I
all
mean?
capable of the same tasks, but they might do them a little bit differently.
You know what I mean? But overall, they're the same thing and they will achieve the same thing.
I think there's a little bit of a difference in that comparison. Like I agree with you. I think that's a good analogy, but we also got to keep in mind with that, in a sense of proving something, that processors tend to be like binary based, so it's zeros and ones, versus our minds, like, yeah, it's on off, but I would say it's probably closer to like quantum mechanics, you know what I mean, with the idea of like there's a lot more complexities going on, I think, that which allows for more variables, and so it allows for us to be even more different than something like binary code. But
I just so and what I'm saying though is that in general, if um, if you take both sides of the scale and you look at them at the extremes, and for me anyway, the way that I see it is trying to think of how to like actually word it, because
take
now
time.
you've got me fucking trying to pick apart my analogy
Well,
rather than my point.
I think when you're trying to prove something with it, it's important, but I don't mean to just criticize your analogy or anything.
No, so it's like so for me in general, when you leave the mind to its own vices, and there's absolutely no discipline, and you don't put any sort of personality into it, uh, one's mind tends to be more destructive than not. And so
Right.
for me, I could just see people, if it was only no personality, it's just mind power, then minds tend to look at the negative over the positive because it stands out more, it hurts more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's just a lot of
Safe.
things that I think would play into a factor overall that would keep us in a pretty low spot looking at
Yeah.
just minds. But then when you start mixing in personalities and what actually makes a person, you
Right,
know
and
what I
like
mean?
other
Once you
aspects of the brain instead of just like one core piece of it.
Right, exactly. That's when you start seeing more what human beings are. But if you were to go the exact opposite way, if you were to try to take the brain part out of it and just say that like just personalities, for instance,
Right.
I don't even know how that would work.
Right, like separating the brain and like only having certain parts active and such, like,
Right.
and that's interesting because then you would probably run into a more extreme version of I mean, in a sense, you could like psychopaths would be an example in the sense of no emotion, right? Like when they are that part of their mind that tells them right and wrong and whatever, like any sort of like conscious is not active for them, then they're different than normal human beings. um, and so I
Train of
imagine
thought. No, sorry, keep going.
I imagine it would be similar, but probably more extreme in many, many different ways. Like you'd have people that are crazy good at art and literally can't speak, walk, talk, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
nothing.
And it's because if you did that and you just like did the personality traits,
Yeah.
then there'd be so little of the brain active that they might be the best painter in the world, but they might not even have the physical mobility to move their arms.
Yeah, and like to bring it back with dreams, like imagine, because like I believe I'd have to do research to like say like absolute fact or whatever, but like I believe when you dream, there are parts of your mind that are less active and some of them that are like near inactive, and then there's other aspects like your visual cortex that is extremely active, allowing you to have like in some cases out of body experiences, things like that. That's because of your visual cortex being so active. And so it's almost like your mind does that on purpose to remove some of the filters of reality or toward reality, so that way you can focus more on your inner reality and get more from it. You know what I mean? And like
Well, and I
focus.
think I think that's actually really important because a lot of people focus on reality so much or the distractions in their reality so much
Yeah.
that they completely forget about the person within their own head. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
And
Like
like in some cases don't even know them.
a lot of people are very, excuse me, a lot of people are very unaware of themselves. Very like for me, like I consider my person to be a very self-aware person. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? In general, I can point out my flaws. I know what I'm working on. I know, you know what I mean? I try to be very self-aware because the only way I think I will ever grow is by criticizing myself and making the effort to grow.
Right, because you need to know what to grow, right? You need to be able to know what to work on. Like if I physically know my arms are weak, then I need to lift my arm muscles, right? I need to use my arm
Right.
muscles to grow them. So it's the same idea. Like if you're aware, then you're able to know what you need to work on. Like yeah.
And I feel like in today's day and age, it's so much easier to focus on somebody else and pick apart and try to make other people act perfect. You don't need to focus on yourself so much
Right.
anymore, right? Because like back in the day before the internet, when you had to wake up every day, you couldn't look at your phone. You had to face yourself in the mirror. You had to face
Your
yourself and
thoughts.
everybody you love. And in order to do that, you would have to you'd have to self-analyze. You'd have to really look at yourself and your destructive habits, the things that you're doing that hurt yourself and the people around you, because you
Yeah.
don't want to hurt them, right? You don't want to
Right.
keep. But I feel like in today's day and age, it's really easy to set that kind of stuff aside. You know what I mean? And it's I don't know. I don't know. I feel like in general, I'm trying to think how to word it again. I hate it when words escape me.
It's
I
okay.
used
Take
to
your time.
pride myself in words. You know what I mean? In
Yeah.
articulating thought.
Part of doing this practice, right?
But it's like so like if you were to tie it into dreaming, right? I feel like people disregard themselves as easily as they do their dreams, right? Because that dreams is a part of your inner self. The dreams are a part of what your subconscious is thinking. It's what is a part of the stuff that it's easy for you to overlook because it's not immediately in the front of your brain. It's not
Yeah.
tangible. It's not. So when you ignore those subtle things, I just feel like it all adds together, right? And I just feel like when you're aware of your dreams, it'll help you be aware of yourself.
I like that. And that's a really neat thing because like you can apply that exact phrase to two things, right? You can say it exactly how you just said it, but then you can also apply that to like reality, right? Like when the idea of like having when you take your dreams and you listen to them, that's they're so important because knowing that your body's telling them to you, and then not doing anything about them, not setting up the goals so you can achieve them, like you're doing yourself a disservice. You're saying, yeah, self, I hear you, but I don't want to listen. I'm gonna do this instead.
I feel like if you like really break that down, if you find yourself being one of those people who are like, yeah, I hear you, self, but why the but? I need you to ask yourself, and I don't mean to like sound dumb when I say this, but really ask yourself, why but? Like,
Right.
I want to be a millionaire, but nothing. You know what I mean? Like, I want generational wealth. I want to be able to, and I don't want it so I can like it'll be nice to be able to buy whatever I want, yes, but I want to be so secure that I don't have to worry about anything, right? Like the US goes to crap, there's civil war. I want to be able to jump on my private jet and go to my house in Dubai where I have a citizenship. You know what I mean? Like I want to be so and the only way that you can do that is with money, right? So I want a security that like very few people in their life will ever think of because I do not think that everywhere is safe. I do not think that everything is okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Well,
believe
no.
safety is in my hands. And
Right.
knowing that, I want to make sure that me and my family are as safe as possible. How do I do that? I need the funds to do that, you know? And so for me, it just kind of like, if I were to listen to the modern day hoopla, you know, like I would think that's unattainable for someone like me. I'm 26 years old. There's no way that I can generate that wealth. Like if you not I don't come from a broke family, as you know, necessarily, but I don't come from a rich one.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I have a modest family. I have I'd say a middle class family, you know,
Yep.
and I don't see nothing wrong with that. But on the same hand, I don't see why just because I'm starting in the middle class, I know it'll be a little bit harder than if I were to have started in the 0.1%, you
Sure.
know, but not everybody's going to start in the 0.1%. And if you look at it, a lot of people try to throw the, oh, well, you were born with wealth. Fun fact, a study was done in like 2020, and it was something dumb. Like 80% of the millionaires in 2020 had made their own million. There was only like it was like 5% or something less than that were actually born into wealth.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And how do you think they got there? They didn't have a but, right? Like they didn't say I want to be a millionaire, but this like, and they probably didn't view it so much like a dream, or at least not in the way that we're talking about it, right? Like they probably didn't go to bed, have a dream of having $1 million, and then discount it. If they did go to bed and had that
Right.
dream, they said, okay, how do I get it, right? Or they just, I mean, there's many different scenarios, but in general, they probably didn't doubt themselves enough to stop. They
But I
clearly
feel
kept going.
like I feel like that's where where we could actually pick apart what a dream really is. Because like some people argue it's what happens when you're sleeping. Like yes, that's a dream,
The
but I'm
opposite of
I'm the
reality.
person I'm the person that dreams while I'm awake. Like the only time
Right.
I start dreaming for me, because I don't dream when I'm sleeping, I don't like I told you earlier, I don't remember those dreams. I can't. It's not that I'm not capable of having them, but I experience them so little that I can't say I ever look forward to one. So
Right.
when do I get to look forward to start dreaming? Someone like me, I start dreaming when I wake up. That's when my dream starts.
Let your mind wander.
So if my dream is while I'm awake and I'm sitting here thinking like, yeah, so my dream is to one day have, how the fuck is that unrealistic? You know what I mean? It's
Right.
not. There's a way, and it's like I heard something. It was like just the other day, really, and it really got to me. And it's like everybody always wants to ask people with success, oh well, how'd you get your money? Like it's gonna be this get rich quick scheme. Like they're gonna talk to a person that has $1 million and they're gonna walk away from that conversation like, yep, and in a month I'm gonna have $1 million. But it's like you take 100 people that made $1 million and you put them all in a room and you ask those 100 people, how'd you make your million? you would have 100 different answers. You might have a couple of people that answer the same, okay, like cryptocurrency,
Sure.
NFT, but you'll have 100 different answers. You have to figure out what's gonna make you your million.
And
Set yourself apart.
right, and that's the idea of having a dream. That's the idea of setting goals. Is you have that dream, you have the thing you want, then you set your goals. You have the ways to get there. But then from there, you have to change yourself first, like you were saying, right? Like everyone generally might have similar answers or very diverse answers. Like, say, 10 people had Bitcoin as an answer. Chances are their decision to get into it was different. What got them even learning about it was probably different to some degree. And they probably had something click in themselves that led them there. And that's an important factor, is in order to set yourself apart, in order to accomplish the things that we want to, we have to first, it's the idea of, you got to change yourself to change the world. You have to build that foundation. You have to be able to rely on yourself, so that way you can continue to go forward, right? Like you can't the idea of, like you were saying, the very minute amount of people have been given $1 million, right? Some people just fall into money, but those are the kind of people that go from 0 to 100 really fast and then crash because they don't know what to do with the money. Some of them are smart enough to, say, hey, what do I do with my money? And then, they're okay, but they seek advice and things like that. And so, like, understanding that you have to build toward it and not separate the idea of, like, okay, that's a dream, so I'm never going to achieve it. Instead, realize, like, yeah, this is one reality that I dreamt up, but that doesn't mean I can't make it a real reality. I can't make it tangible.
Well,
I can.
and that's where I would argue, honestly, to redefine how you look at dreams. Like,
Yeah.
to me, there's no reason, like, even if you dream every night, even if you have vivid as fuck dreams every night, there's no reason to me that your dreaming has to stop once you're awake. And once you start dreaming when you're awake, once you start wanting, and not just wanting, but looking at, because I think it's very important to be happy with what you have, right? You can't
Yeah.
always be looking at, oh, I want, I want, I want, I want, I want.
Right.
You're destined for a life of hardships and sadness and
Yep.
rage if that is the case.
Yep.
But I'm saying it is okay to want more out of life and use that as fuel. And I'm telling you, like, you might not always be motivated to do the things that you said that you wanted to do. You might not always be motivated every day to stick to the goals that you put in front of you to attain your dream. But just because you're not motivated doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Right.
I know a lot of people would be like, oh, it's okay, take a mental health. And I'm not saying never take a mental health day. I'm not saying never focus on your health, because mental health is wealth. You need to take care of your mindset first and foremost, always.
For sure.
But you have to be careful not to coddle yourself. Like, there does get to a point where you have to just wake up, snap out of it, and hit the ground running, regardless of how you feel.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something that I struggled with for a very long time. I talked to you about all these good ideas, and then I would go to sleep, and it's like, what are you doing to try to work towards them, though?
Yeah.
And that's why all at once in this last, I don't know, 2 weeks, it's like it's flipped a switch. You know what I mean? All at once, I'm telling myself every day when I wake up that these are things I have to do.
I just had a thought. So we discount dreams, and we say that they're not real, but yet that is just it's a possibility, right? And we think it's not very possible. So why is it, though, that, like you said, like, what are we doing to accomplish our goals? Like, we have these ideas, and then we I think that oftentimes the reason we don't follow them is because we doubt them, right? So if we doubt them, that means we see it as not very possible. But that is exactly that. We're seeing it as another possibility, the possibility being that we fail, that we don't achieve. And so if that's the case, then why are we giving the doubt possibilities, the unlikely possibilities, those realities, more credit than the possibilities that we do achieve?
I think that's an interesting point, right? Because I'm actually a person that suffers with a lot of self-doubt.
Same here.
General, I can say something to you, and I can be 100% convinced of it for you, right? And then when I try to go and act the same thing myself, it's like I don't know where to start. I feel like I'm at, like, there's a starting line, but I'm looking for it.
You
You know what
believe
I
the
mean?
words, but not when they're applied to yourself.
So it's like, so for instance, for me, like I've been saying that I don't think that if you're making content nowadays, especially even as a video game content creator, I think it's very important to be making content that is structured around you or a niche that you're doing in your stream rather than the gameplay itself, because everybody's doing gameplay type stuff. You can go and find a million different people doing a million different clips.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like I say that, but then when I go to apply it to myself, I'm like, right, like that's good advice on surface, but like where do you start with that? Because then I'm starting to look at my content and it's like, okay, well, I mean, yeah, there are these funny things that happen, and then I go back and I look at them, and then I second guess and like, nah, I guess it was a lot funnier in the moment. It's not as funny right now. What? I
Yeah.
don't think it'd really work. It probably flop, but it's like it probably would. If there's a shot of 1 in a million, 1 in 1,000, you're gonna miss it if you don't take it. But if you were to just fucking let it ride, throw it to the wall, see what sticks. You know what I mean? If I were to have tried every idea that I've had, sitting here reflecting on it, I refuse to believe that none of them would have worked.
Yeah, I mean, it's the idea of discounting the reality before you knew whether it was going to be real or not.
Right.
Like
And
it could have been, and instead you decided to in your mind open your eyes and say it's not real, even though like nothing is real until it happens. Like even me going outside right now, it isn't real because I haven't gone outside yet. But once I go outside, now it's real that I went outside. And so, though it's more
I
possible,
mean,
it's just a possibility.
and it's crazy because if you think about it, like that's still only real to you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It
If
didn't
I
have any
like,
impact to you.
you know what I mean? And once you start looking at life that way, that's when you can really start trying to expand not just your mindset, but how you view the world.
Yeah.
And once you start viewing the world differently, I feel like a lot of doors open up. You know, like up until 2 weeks ago, I'd have an idea and just be like, no, never mind. And I talk myself out of it, right? But in the last week, I've had you, I've had my fiance, and I've had numerous people tell me that, yo, you got a different mindset with you right now. Like you're doing things different right now. Like
Yeah.
I see a change. You know what I mean? I have been told that on multiple fronts. And it's because I got tired of looking for a starting line. Like I said, it's like I say that like don't do your game, focus on your niche or your personality. And it's like, okay, but where do I start? People are looking for that starting line. Stop looking for it. Draw one. Invite people to the race. Why do you have to
Right.
start on
I like
somebody
that.
else's starting line?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
so now I'm just shifted gears. So I'm writing down everything. And I think it sounds cliche as shit, but I'm telling you right now,
I'm
once you
all for
write it on
cliche.
paper and you look at it every day and you don't just I'm not saying it's like writing a note. You can't just be like, I want to get rich and then okay. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying if you hold on a second. I'm saying if you take let's see my little freaking notebook here. Leave my doodles alone, all right? Uh, let's see. Where did we start? Where did we start? Look, I got pages on this shit right now.
And so, and
All
it's
right.
like the idea. Oh, go ahead.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like minus the doodles, but like
Yeah.
start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Write
It's the idea of,
goals.
and like you
Write
mixed
shit.
realities is what you did. You took a reality in your head, a possibility there, and then you made it that much more real in the one that you live in the most by bringing it into that world. You wrote it down. Now you manifested it into this world that we live in, and I can see it now. You can share it. Like you just put it on screen. Everyone now that saw that, it's now part of their reality, right? And so like I think that's really cool. That itself is making an impact. So then you expound upon that. How do you make it more of an impact? Well, goals, right? Actions.
And that's where I just think it's so incredibly important to stop asking where do you start.
Yeah.
Stop and just start. Anything.
Yeah.
Really, like you can in today's day and age, the thing that's beautiful is that we live in the day and age of opportunity. Okay, and I know not everybody can seize that opportunity, and rather not everybody will seize that opportunity. But with the internet, we have this amazing thing to instantly connect with an untold amount of people,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of people try to discredit that and try to, oh, well, how do I do? And it's, you pick your thing, right? Like if I, for instance, I really like Zelda, right? If I went online today and I just started posting every day on every social media little tidbits about Zelda that I know, other people that like Zelda will start following me. They will start interacting with my comment, asking me questions, asking for more content because it's something they enjoy and we can touch base on it and expand upon it. People love feeling like they're a part of something. Give them something to be a part of.
Right. And like to tie that in with the idea of dreams is like you're no longer seeing it as a dream at that point, right? You're not thinking of it as like a that would be cool if it happens, or when you start doing it, you don't have to believe in it, right? Like you could literally do exactly that and not believe it's going to work. And chances are it's going to work anyway because you're taking the steps to make it possible, right? It's like I don't believe that I can walk, but I take 10 steps, and every step I don't believe that I'm going to be able to take the next one. I'm still going to take those steps. And so like someone on the outward in, or when I look back, I'm going to be like, I, yeah, I walked. And so like sometimes you don't even need to believe in it. Like obviously it's better if you do, and there's the passion aspect that makes it better, but there's a lot of things that you really just do the science. If it works, it works.
Facts. And
Apply
that's
reality.
the thing about the internet is that you can try so many different things. You're not anchored down to any individual thing. You can shoot things in the dark. You can have different ideas. You can have different dreams, and you can try them all. Like, because if you try one and it fails, okay, one failed.
Right.
And then when you try the next one, it's like, okay, maybe that one failed. And then it's like, oh shit, my third one did really well. So now that one's gaining really good traction. Now you can afford to be like, well, I've always kind of wanted to dip into this, and now I can do this.
Right.
Maybe that one will fail, but you position yourself in a place to be able to take that loss and keep going. You
And
know?
it's interesting because like I think that comes down to, like we talked about it a little bit last time, the idea of failure, right? And how important it is to take the lessons learned from that. And I think sometimes what we do is we romanticize our dreams and think that, okay, my dream is to be the best pen artist. And so then I do that for 2 years and realize I'm never going to be that, or that it's not working. Nobody's finding traction, like whatever I'm not getting what I want out of it. And so then as a result, I think I'm a failure and I'm never going to do anything else again. Instead of being so attached to it, maybe take a step back and I realize, okay, well that would have been good, but what's really driving me to do that? What is my overarching goal, right? And like we know ours, the idea of freedom and not having to answer to anyone, the security that comes with it, all those things, we know that. And so then it's not so much like any one thing is gonna ruin us, because we understand like these are avenues to get there. And so we take that avenue and we do everything we can with it. And if something's not working with it, we're not so in love with it that we're not willing to change it in the ways we need to. We're willing to, because ultimately the way that we were doing it isn't what matters the most, right?
See, and I think there's an analogy or whatever that I
Yeah.
heard that goes really good with it. And from a book, and this dude is walking through the woods with a horse, right?
Okay.
And the boy looks over to the horse and says, "I don't know. I don't see a way out. I don't see any way out of here." You know what I mean? And the horse asks the boy, "Well, can you see in front of you? Can you take one more step?" And the boy's like, "Yes, I can take one more step." Horse said, "Just take one more step." And I feel like it's very important because like when you're looking at life and you're looking at the broad picture of everything, it might not be very clear which way you have to go or what you have to do.
Yeah.
But as long as you can take one more step, just take that one more step. And I promise you, you will make it ahead.
Right. And it's cool because like sometimes what'll happen is you'll find that you might start walking one path and you take that one more step, and you get out of that path and you realize like, yeah, this path isn't working for me, it's leading nowhere. So then now you backtrack or sidestep, right? You go through the trees a bit and you get lost, and then you find a different path and you start going on that path. And then you do that, say for 5 years, 10 years, whatever, it doesn't matter. And then you get to the further point, or somewhere else, and then you start looking back and you see multiple paths and you recognize them. And now you can take that information you had and you can apply it to the next path that you're on, and you can walk that path that much better. You can use things that you learned and gathered from those paths. And where I'm getting at with that, like to give it kind of into a real perspective, I started out wanting to make video games when I was in high school. That was what I wanted to do. I started an imaginary name called Archaic Industries, and I started making video games. I made a simple mobile game, and I was on set for that. And then I decided, like, you know what, honestly, like, I can't see myself sitting here in front of a computer coding for 20 hours a day for the next 10 years. That wasn't for me. So then we found music, right? And I started making music. And then from there, I was doing some Blender stuff, some 3D stuff that was tying into music. I learned how to make instrumentals. I learned how to make logos a little bit better. I learned website creation, all of these things, starting a business because of music. And now here we are with ThinkAside. And all of those things that I learned, all those things that I could say like were seemingly useless, aren't, because I can apply 99% of it to everything that I'm doing now, and I'm able to do now that much better and that much more efficiently because of the wisdom and knowledge that I learned from the things that you could call failures when they weren't.
Well, and that's just it. Like, I think failure is objective, right? Kind of like a dream.
Right.
Like, if you want to take anything at face value, it's like, okay, yes, we did music. And if you want to look at it as black and white, as far as, well, did you make money on it? Are you known for it? All right, then you failed. Okay,
Right.
if you want to look at it that way, that simply, then absolutely you can do that. But as you said, I promise you, the skills that I ascertained from those things very much help me in everything that I do today.
Exactly.
And it's like, so I don't know, you have to look at the small victories. You have to. And once you realize
Battle experience.
Yeah, exactly. And then you just kind of have to start realizing like your dreams are nothing but battles. It might be a bigger battle, but it's still just a battle, right? So like realistically, if I've walked this far and I fought these many battles already, maybe I will. Maybe it'll be fighting for my dream that gets me cut down. You know?
But
But
who
if
cares?
that's the case, I feel like getting cut down, going for my dream is better than pitching a tent on the dead bodies that I've left behind.
I like that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's the cliche phrase, I'd rather die on my walking or on my knee, or what is it?
I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees.
Right, exactly. Right, like there's no point to give in to any sort of anything. Like, you just keep going, and if you die standing up, so be it. Like, obviously we all want to get to our end goal, right? Like, that's obviously, but that satisfaction, and that kind of goes back to the idea of, I think you mentioned it earlier, is that you have to be happy with where you're at and what you have, right? Like, you have to find satisfaction in what you're doing now, and you have to use that to drive you forward, but not to let it hold you back. Because if you say like, I just wish I had this, I just wish I had that, like whatever, and you're not happy with now, it's going to be destructive. And then if you were to die today, like how hurtful, how harmful is that going to be to you if you're not happy with where you are? Like, you're going to die a sad death.
I'm gonna argue that once you're dead, you're not gonna give a fuck because you're dead.
But while you're dying, which I think still matters, you know what I mean?
And that's just it.
Like,
I think
your last thought would be a depressing one. Like, that's
that's
sadder than having depressing thoughts.
I mean, but that's just I would argue that that's just your perception, right? Because like the person in that situation,
Absolutely. Yeah.
who's dying isn't necessarily going to give a fuck what you got to think about their situation.
Absolutely.
But I do agree as
I'm
far
definitely
as like,
projecting.
I think it's sad. I think in general, but for me, I am very, very happy with my current life. I'm not happy with every aspect of my life.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we ever
But
will be.
and I think happy is also a suggestive term that people get messed up. Like, it's not that I wake up and piss rainbows every day. Okay. I
Right.
don't wake up like, yeah, my life.
Wake up
That's not the case. You know what I mean? And I don't live my life chasing that feeling of happiness, right? I am very content with my life, and I am very much in love with my life. Would be a better way to put it. You know, there are things I would change for it, and I'm actively trying to change those things for the better. But as you said, if I were to die today, in general, I would die with a smile because everybody that I know and love knows exactly where they stand in my life. In general, everybody in my life knows exactly where they stand in my life. And that brings me great solace, great pleasure knowing that if I were to die today, nobody has to question, oh, well, I wonder how he felt about me. You know what I mean? I make my feelings towards people very well known for that reason, actually, because that's just who I am as a person. And I don't know, I think it's very, 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 very important to count your blessings. And I don't know how else to say it other than count your blessings. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be a religious thing. I think blessings could even be argued as your privileges, the things that you've been given, because, like, regardless of what's giving it, or whatever, if there is a specific person or it's a thing or whatever, something is making it happen, or it's simply happening. Either way, you're thankful for it. You know what I mean? So, like,
exactly.
yeah, no, I get you, and I think that's really cool, because then you're able to realize your impact, and you're comfortable knowing that there's nothing left unsaid. There's nothing that you have to regret, because you're not gonna say you're aware that you're dying right now, and your mind is playing everything back, and you said, and I never said I'm sorry, or I
Right.
never tried to get that last whatever that I wanted, or you know what I mean. You don't have to worry about that, and that kind of, I think, in a sense, kind of keeps you going forward. Oddly enough, accepting that you'd be peaceful at death allows you to be peaceful and more progressive in life, oddly enough, if you look at it that way.
Well, I feel like obviously I feel like there's always that fear of death to some extent. Like,
Oh, for sure.
clearly, like I have no interest in actually dying today. Like, the thought of it is scary as shit.
It's a
You know what I
battle
mean?
that I've personally tried to get over, like, in the sense of I'm consistently working toward accepting death, but I'm not there yet either.
Yeah, and that's for me too, because it actually, like, death itself, the thought of death plagues my mind a lot. Not as far as, like, I don't know, not in the conventional sense, not like, oh, I don't want to die today, or like those aren't thoughts of mine, but it's the uncertainty that follows that
Yeah,
gets me. You know
right.
what I mean? And that's where my mind always wanders, is because, like, if death really is final and there is no afterlife, right? If that is a thing, and just the fact that I'm saying that, a lot of religions would condemn me, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, so not trying to make this religious at all, but it's like,
Yeah, just the underlying truths of it and such.
so
Yeah.
that battle is actually, I feel like, a very good topic for another
Yeah,
time.
yeah. No, for
You know,
sure.
because I feel like if we were to expand upon that, then that is what the rest of our episode will entail.
Yeah,
Because that is
well,
an interesting conversation.
it is, and like to tie it back, then I think just that, like, knowing that, in a sense, being aware that death exists and not kind of ignoring that, it helps in your goals, right? Like, it'll allow you to be that much, not necessarily rushed, but you're gonna feel like you don't have all the time in the world. And even without death, I think that's something we need to be aware of, is that, like, things happen, and we can never prepare for all of those things. And so, like, say your goal is to um well, be the best artist ever, right? We used that example earlier, but then your hands get chopped off. Now you have to learn to do it with your feet. Are you going to do that? You know what I mean? Like, maybe you will. Maybe you'll do it with your feet or your mouth. Like, there are people that do that. But the idea of it is that you might lose the ability to do the thing that you set out to do because you took too long.
That's a good point.
you know, and like just being aware that like we don't have all the time in the world. We shouldn't take the things we have for granted, and
We
that I
shouldn't
think
take tomorrow for granted,
right,
you know?
and like being aware that even the things we have, like you were saying, right, like being thankful of the things around us and how that can like kind of give us a sense of push forward, and it eases that weight, and being aware that we have what we have, use it to our advantage and don't let it hold us back. Like instead of saying I wish I had this, or I want a Lamborghini but I currently have a bike, am I going to say, well, now I can't go do what I want to do because I can't get there as fast? Like I can still get there, so why am I not pedaling my bike to my best of
Well,
ability
even
so I can
well,
get
even
there?
if you don't have a bike, why don't you walk?
Right.
You know
Like
what I mean? If you
work
got
with
the
what you
legs,
got.
like, right, don't stop making excuses for yourself.
I mean,
And and
I sorry.
and I feel like in today's day and age, it's too easy to say, well, I can't because, or I didn't because. And it's like, I did that. I was that guy for, I won't say the last year and a half, but like, I've known what I have to do. I've known that I've had to been editing videos and posting on multiple platforms. And like, come the end of the day, I always talk myself out of it because, I don't have a good idea for a clip. I just streamed 18 hours. You mean to tell me out of 18 hours, there wasn't a 2 minute clip in there? There wasn't a 60-second clip in there?
Right.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
But I convinced myself that, oh, well, I don't know where it is. I'm not going to watch 18 hours of gameplay. So like I don't know. And then you don't do it. And it's because I just feel like it's too easy to talk yourself out of something. It's too easy to make that excuse. It's harder to do the work. And it's like at some point you have to realize that you just got to do the fucking work.
Yeah,
That
it's
you got to stop making excuses. You got to make time for the work, because if you don't, all you're ever going to have time for are your excuses. And it's
and then you're going to convince yourself that those excuses are real. And once you
right,
do
and
that, now
it's
that's reality.
detrimental to you, because like that fake it till you make it is true to a certain extent, but it also works the other way around. If you're speaking to yourself, if you're not talking yourself up, if you're not faking it till you make it, and you're telling yourself, oh well, I'll do that, but I didn't do it today, I'll do it tomorrow, and then tomorrow comes and you're like, oh well, I can't do it today and I'll do it tomorrow, and then you just keep pushing it off.
And you're
Now
lying, but it's
tomorrow never comes, but
right.
you believe in your heart that you'll do it tomorrow, knowing, if you think about it, your past behavior dictates otherwise. If someone
Right.
else, if you were talking to your best friend and they were like, nah, man, really, I'll do it tomorrow, you'd say, dude, fuck you. You've been saying you'll do it tomorrow for the last 3 months, and
Yeah.
tomorrow's never come. You're not going to believe them. But since it's yourself, you're not going to psychoanalyze yourself like that. You don't want to pick yourself apart like that. And it's like, you have to, because nowadays, people will tell you what you want to hear. Everything's okay. It's okay. You don't need to change. You're doing everything you can. And like, that's, you sometimes have to tell yourself that no, you're not doing everything you can. You can do a little bit more. Yes, you're
Always.
doing a lot. Don't discount what you're doing,
Right.
but you could do a little bit more, right? So, like, for instance, realistically, I've gotten decent at editing. I'm not like this editing wizard,
Sure.
but I could make a TikTok clip in under 15 minutes in general. You know what I mean? Run it through one app, run it through another app, put it on my phone, and I can upload it. I'm gonna get another app on my phone so I can generate captions, so I don't have to type out every single word to every single and transcribe these
Yeah.
entire. You know what I mean? They
Yeah.
got apps that'll do that, so that's what I'll use.
Very
You
cool.
know,
Yeah.
but it's like running a video that you already have through a couple apps and learning how to do it, taking that, even if it takes an extra hour or two. If you have to sacrifice some stream time in order to make time to do that, then you have to, because if you want to see growth nowadays, this isn't the starting days of Twitch. This isn't the starting days of anything on the internet. You're not just going to post one time on any platform and
Yeah, well, and that
y-
goes with most things in life, right? Like there's someone doing most of anything, not always. Like yeah, you might be the first in something, but it's far rarer because time goes on and more people have tried and lived and, experienced and more chances of people doing similar things. But I think that's okay as long as like we said multiple times, you had said like you have to make time for multiple aspects of building yourself is effectively what I got from it. It's like going
Right.
back to what we said, like you got to change yourself to change the world. And at the same time, by changing yourself, you're changing your reality, and vice versa. You're changing your reality to change yourself, and you're believing yourself to be differently. And by doing that, you say, okay, so, and this is something that like some books will say and things, is like where you say, okay, I want to be this person. Okay, what would this person do? Okay, this is how he would act. This is what he would say. This is what he wouldn't do. And then you start doing those things. You fill the shoes of the person you want to become. And the next thing you know, you're changing your reality because you're that person, because you're doing those things and you're not doing the things that you are currently doing. So you're effectively dying in a sense, right? Because you're becoming someone else. But that's not a bad thing. Like some people say, like, you know, you're changing, you're becoming someone else, but fuck them. Like that doesn't matter. Like you become who you want to be, and that's the point. If they don't like that, I mean, that's something they have to deal with.
And
But
that,
you
and
got to
like
deal with
the tie
yourself.
kind of into dreaming, that's one of the things that's been helping me make such a drastic change in myself over the last couple weeks, is that I finally wrote down what I wanted, what the fuck I wanted.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And I just started working back from there. How do I attain it? How do I get there? So then once you start breaking down the steps and you start working backwards, and it's like, well, wow, like I need to do all these things. And then I start looking at how I'm spending my time. And it's like, well, realistically speaking, I could be taking time from here and here and here. And that's actually what we'll touch on tomorrow. You know what I mean? Is time.
yep.
And it's once you start looking at it and you start trying to, like, I'm trying not to like go on into a tangent about time now.
If you can tie it back into this, I think it's okay. It's
But
well,
so like for me, I started looking at time and time management differently, right? And you just once you start like if you have to write down where you're putting your time into. Every app that you use, every single fucking one of them has a thing on it to where you can tell how much time you
right, the
spend
timers,
on
yeah.
those apps. I challenge you to, on the end of the week, go and look at that time and see how much ridiculous amount of time we are all spending on social media.
Yep.
Okay? And
Or
you
on our
take
phones in
that
general.
time and you just think, wow, I need to be doing videos. I need to be doing this, and this. But I've spent collectively on every app 60 hours
Right.
of
My
scrolling time. And people think that's crazy. That's like an outrageous number. But when you're scrolling for hours on TikTok, and then you're scrolling for hours on Instagram and Facebook, and you add all those things up at the end of your week, the time you are spending in it is insane.
and then that like so and then an aspect of that is the things that you spend time on make up your reality, right? And if you spend more time on one thing than another thing, or at least as much, is that not as much your reality as when you're not in that reality? And if that's the case, is that a reality you want to live in? Do you really want to live and make your life up on social media and on other apps, on your phone in general, on screens, watching Netflix, things like that? Like entertainment stuff, I'm not trying to like, you know, shun it or whatever. Like there, it's all important. Like it could, rest is important, right? But that's what it should be seen as, is a time of rest. Shouldn't be it seen as a time of work or your life. You know what I mean? That's that.
Right.
There's a separation there that should be there. Discipline.
And that's where I would really try to tie it back into your dreams, as far as a lot of your scrolling, a lot of that kind of shit is to distract you from having, and I say it's to distract you. It is distracting you
Yeah.
in
Either
general
way.
from
Yeah.
having those ambitions and having those dreams yourself. Like
I like
you're gonna
that.
turn on and watch American Idol instead of try to become American Idol.
And the
You
next
know,
thing you know, sorry, but yep.
a small amount of people will actually go and try to be and become American Idol. Obviously, that's what the show is, but
Sure.
the majority of people are sitting at home watching it like, oh, that's so cool. They're so amazing. And it's like
Yeah.
all they did was learn how to sing. I know I'm not gonna say that it's easier. I'm just saying, like,
Simple
for someone who
but
grew up
complex.
with for instance, my older sister, she's always just had vocals. Like from the first time she's ever tried to sing, she has been able to sing. You know what I mean? So to some people, it comes inherently easier. But like for instance, if I try to sing in general, I'm not good. But there are exceptions where like there have been times where you heard me sing and you're like, dude, why don't you just do that all the time?
Yeah.
And it's like I could learn how to sing if I wanted
Anyone
to.
can.
Put the effort in, learn how to sing.
Yep.
Or don't put the effort into learning how to sing and learn how to use auto tune, and it will teach you how to sing.
Right. Versus living
There's
vicariously
avenues, there's
through.
tools.
Yeah.
You know, and all you have to do is start it with a dream and work backwards. What do you want?
Yeah.
And then start looking at how you would get there.
How do you get there?
You know, sometimes nowadays, you know, people make a living off of making tools for you. So people see the fact that people want to sing and they're not very good at it. So auto-tune was made. So now there's a way for people who don't necessarily sing the best to at least have a chance, right? Even without going through singing lessons, even without any of that, you can buy auto-tune, throw it on your voice, and in general, it'll be like, yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can make it sound decent. So it's like, start with the dream, look for the tools, and get the fuck to work.
Yeah, fair.
You know?
No, yeah. So like, and when you mentioned, you know, the idea of people sitting home and just watching American Idol and stuff instead of actually trying to sing, like to me, that's living vicariously. It's the idea of seeing someone else's reality and trying to make it yours, but it doesn't necessarily end up working in a beneficial way a lot of the times, right? It's like if I want to be Elon Musk and live his reality, but I don't want to do everything that he does, then I'm just gonna end up being like a portion.
But that's where I would argue not to try to be the people and be yourself.
Yep, make your
You know
own
what I mean?
reality.
Like I don't, for me, for instance, like when I talk about wanting to be in the top 0.1%, when you mention Nick Merckx, I want you to mention BungshotBilly. When you mention Joe Rogan, I want you to mention ThinkAside.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's not that I want to become those people at all. It's just I see what they have done. I see what they have accomplished. And obviously, I'm not going to sit here and say I agree with every single thing that Joe Rogan says
Sure.
But to have that level of influence, to make it to that point is where I strive
to be as good as they are at what they're doing.
It's not so much as becoming them, but becoming what they embody, becoming the best at what they do.
Right. It's like seeing other realities that have come into existence and then taking those realities and using it as a push to see like, okay, yeah, so it is that much more possible, and then taking lessons from their reality and applying it to your own reality, building up your own, right? And continuing on your path, not trying to walk on theirs.
And that's why I would actually try to rope back to what we were talking, like we mentioned distractions and absorbing content earlier.
Yeah.
I kind of just wanted to touch on that a little bit as far as I think it's because you're going to be exposed to content no matter what you do. It's if you have a phone and you are on the internet, you are exposing yourself to content, right?
Yep.
Good, bad, or indifferent. And I think it's very important to try to filter the content that you are absorbing.
Yep.
I know in general, people like to think like, oh, I'm grown, I can watch whatever I want. But I'm telling you right now, if you watch, say, videos of just people beating the shit out of each other every single day, I feel like not just feel, but like for instance, when I was with my ex, it was proven with her son, when we let him watch cartoons that had violence in it, he would be more prone to walking around the house, punch, kick. You know what I mean? Just because at some level it is gonna affect your brain. Maybe not as much as a child, obviously, but if you're gonna expose yourself to that kind of content, you're gonna emulate it in some sort of way, whether it be physical, mental, emotional. You will start seeing a change in yourself if you look for it.
Yeah.
So like for me, I personally really like to listen to a lot of Echo because there's a lot of music that he has that is just motivational. There are a lot of things that he says that I hear it once, it gives me goosebumps, and it's like, that could be me.
Right.
There's, you know what I mean? There's no reason that can't be me. There's no reason why I can't make it, you know? So like, I've made it to the point that I still expose myself to content, but I try to make it as motivational as possible. I try to filter through as much of the hoopla, we'll call it, as possible. And I feel like that has also helped me in a way knuckle down and start being more determined and work harder towards my dreams because the content that I'm focusing on is not necessarily giving me motivation, but giving me the discipline and giving me the belief in myself to know that you can do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and it's the idea of, so if your dream is a reality that you're trying to make, then isn't the things you're consuming impacting that reality directly? And if you're consuming negative things, is it not tearing down the reality that you want and then instead building up a different one? And same thing with positive content, right? If you're consuming positive content, if you're consuming things that's good for you, then it's directly building the reality that you want because it is positively impacting that reality, that dream. It's making it real because it's all adding in. And you said something that was really important. I think that was really wise to say, is that distractions or consuming content will distract you from what you're trying to do, right? It will literally destroy that reality. It will stop you from creating it. And that's an important thing to realize, is that a little bit, okay, that's one thing, but be very mindful of what you consume. Yeah.
And that's why I've actually made it a point, and that's why like I urge anybody who has that self-doubt, who's really questioning what they want to do, I urge you to listen to some Echo. I'm telling you right now, and read, not just listen, but read the lyrics with it. Like fully try to understand what he is saying. Because at least for me, and I'm giving you this advice solely because it worked for me. I'm not saying it's, gonna make a night and day difference for everybody.
Right. It's not so much advice as it's suggestion of what works for
Right.
you. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And for me, I noticed that once I started listening to more Echo and I really started analyzing his lyrics and what he was actually saying, I started taking myself a lot more seriously. I started putting my foot in front of the other, my right foot, trying to make this stuff happen. And I just feel like it's very important to, because I don't think you need motivation to necessarily get to where you want to go, because there'd be some days that you're just not motivated.
Right.
But I do think you need an overall motivation. You know what I mean? You need.
Yeah. Yeah.
I say
Well,
you need. For me, I needed at least a little bit of motivation, because if I don't have, that belief that I can make it, for me, like you were saying earlier, that you don't necessarily have to believe in it. For me, that's not true. That doesn't stand true and ring true for me, because if I don't believe in it, then I just feel like I'm wasting my time. I feel like it's not working. It swirls me in a bunch of negativity that I do not like. And so for me, I absolutely have to believe in it. And um, it's little things like listening to Echo, listening to motivational speeches and things, like filtering my content, that help me believe that it is indeed possible for me, because there are people that started out in far worse situations than me that made it further than I am, that further than any of my friends believe that I can make it.
we'll
You
see.
know
And
what I mean?
I don't. I want to. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because, like, in a way, it's so belief doesn't always come initially. Is, I guess, same thing as like motivation is what I tried to get across is you can do the work, and as you start to do it, like you said, you need something that kind of feeds you, right? You need that thing that like keeps you going and gives you that confidence in it. And the cool thing about like doing something and not necessarily believing it was possible right off is that if you do it, then if you achieve it, you're gonna think like, oh wow, I can, you know what I mean, at least that one thing. And then you're gonna have that little bit of like belief, and then as you do it some more, you're gonna believe it that much more and more and more and more, and it kind of feeds upon itself. But like you were saying with like the start, right? Like sometimes you don't need to know where to start. Like you might not know where to start, but you need to draw that line. So if you don't believe that that is the line, maybe draw it anyway. And then once it's there, you might believe like, that yes, this is the line because it feels right. You're there now.
Okay, so like you don't necessarily need a. Okay, so you're saying more like you don't necessarily need to believe it to start.
Yeah, you don't necessarily need it to believe it to start, but you also, if you could say in a scenario that you could keep going regardless of how you felt about it, chances are you're still going to achieve it, or there is a chance, I should say, that you're still going to achieve it, assuming you continue to do the work.
Well,
Now,
because I will say there was for a while I was struggling with my gaming stream, for instance,
yep,
right? And I would say that there was for a time I was actually struggling in my belief with it. You know what I mean? And struggling with the overall goal. You know,
sure,
because in general, you know, there's definitely ups and downs, right? And so I can relate to what you're saying to some extent as far as I didn't necessarily believe in it uh,
and,
this entire time. You know what I mean? I started off believing in it, and I believe in it now. You know, but there was at a point in the middle where that belief kind of feigned,
yeah, well,
and
and I think the important thing to like why I brought it up and why I'm rehashing it is because I think going back to like our idea of dreams and goals and the distinction between dreams and reality and things like that and how they are kind of the same or they should be. I think belief, oftentimes we think that in order for something to succeed, we have to believe in it right off, or that we need to have that. Because belief, like, what do we think of belief? Like, I personally, I see belief as something where, like, without proof, we think it's possible type thing. But, like, that thought is either there or it's not there, but it doesn't make it true or not true, right? So, like, technically speaking, at least in my reasoning, we could technically do that thing regardless of if we think it's going to be true or not, and it can still prove to us instead whether it's true or not. And so sometimes what I'm trying to convey is that whether you have belief or not, try it, because you may get the belief afterwards. It might prove to you as a result of doing it that you should have belief in it because it is true, that it is possible. Do you know what I mean? Just from like a very core.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because like I said, for me, it's I don't know, because like it's one of those things. It's kind of hard because it's like for me, for instance, start like looking at the start of my stream because it's much easier for me to relate to what you're saying during the middle of it. You know what I mean? During the middle of the timeline when I kind of lost faith in it, and you know, I was telling myself just one more day. Like
Yeah, yeah.
that's literally
One more
how I
step.
got through.
Yeah.
Every day I woke
Fuck yeah.
up and I was like, you know what? Maybe I won't be able to do this forever. Maybe it will fail, but one more day. I just one more day. And there were a few times I cried. Like I literally woke up crying, like just one more day.
Yeah.
You know? And I always did that one more day. And so in
cool.
that time, I can really relate to what you're saying as far as you don't have to believe. One more day. You know what I mean? But at the beginning of it, and now even, it's hard for me to see what you're saying because like I don't think that I would have sunk as much money into this if I didn't believe it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have spent and got all the setup if I didn't believe in it. I wouldn't have been able to bring myself to just take that shot in the dark without believing in it because
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because like you say belief, and I hear it in almost two different senses. Like I hear belief this now, and it sounds more like knowledge that it's going to work versus a thought that it might not be possible. And I know that sounds kind of the same, but again, it's like you believe it now because you think that it is more possible. You don't believe it in the sense that you just have blind faith. You know what I mean? You're not just willy-nilly
right.
wishful thinking like, oh yeah,
No,
I think it's
I believe it more now because just as you said, now I have
proven.
like I showed before, I have a written plan. I have an actual an actual plan to try to make it happen. So now it's not so like you said, it's not so much of a belief like I think it's going to happen. To me, it's going to happen.
Right, and it's
It's just a
shown this and
matter
this and this, so it makes sense that if you do this, it's more of like a science.
right. As opposed to before I was doing it, but I wasn't really writing anything down. Yes, I was learning lessons. Yes, I was applying them, but self-analyzing, I would say I was applying them in a minuscule way. My new plan, my new, we'll call it rhetoric, my new steps that I've written down, that I've articulated to myself, to you, to my team, is it is just it's just different, you know. And I feel I'm trying to figure out the right way to word it. So it's not so much that I believe in my dream and my plan, uh, as much as I know the science to it.
Yeah, and I
You
think
know,
that's like changing the perception of the word belief. We'd have to look up the word belief to like really get like a define or finite like
I'll look it up
of
real
what
quick.
it is, but I'm talking more of like the perception of it, like the connotation. When we hear belief, we don't necessarily think, like if I said I believe I'm going to be a millionaire, you're gonna be like, oh, that's a nice belief. You're not gonna
An
say like,
acceptance
oh,
that a statement is true or that exists,
right.
or that something
And so
exists.
you accept it without really knowing the science behind it. And so like
Right,
if
because it says trust, faith, or confidence in someone or
right.
something.
Right. And so I say I'm going to be a millionaire, and you say, oh, that's a nice belief, instead of saying,
Right.
like, that's a really cool path that you're taking. What steps have you taken, and what steps are you taking next? You know, you're not even going to think about any of that. Instead, that's wishful thinking. Good luck.
People immediately will discount that and be like, "Ha, yeah,
Right.
you know what
Because
I
it's
mean."
just a belief versus yeah.
And that's actually it's actually interesting to think about, because that's something that I personally have battled with for like the last year and a half now. Because when people ask me what I do, when people,
Same
you
here.
know what I mean,
Yeah.
and it's like,
Because it's not a real job. Like using my head is not a real job. Self mastery is not a real job. Learning hobbies not a real job.
right. So like when you, but I argue that it can be.
Well, and like ultimately, if those get you toward your goal, as long as you're afloat, as long as you have everything you need to get there, what does it matter the path you're taking to get there if it's getting you there?
Well, and that's just it, because like for me, people have tried to argue that like what I do is a job and everything, but it's like I make money with what I'm doing. No, it's not a lot. No, not well, right now it's not a lot anyway. You know what I mean? But I make enough to live.
Yep.
So who are you to tell me that it's not a job? You know what I mean?
Well, and it's
Just because I'm not trading my time for money in the conventional sense.
yeah,
You know
because
what I
like
mean?
ultimately,
Which that
if
kind of
you're
ties into our conversation tomorrow.
yeah, well, and yeah, exactly, and that's the cool thing is like goals and dreams and things like that like will get pushback, like you'll get pushback, like, and I think what you were getting as the idea of like being like having a hard time with it is the confidence, right? Is like being confident in what you're doing regardless of how someone feels about it. And that's something I've
Right.
always struggled with too, is like being confident in whatever it is you're doing and realizing that as long as you're able to do it and you're where you need to be to do it, then you don't have to worry about anything else. Like it doesn't matter how much money you're making. It doesn't matter if you have a nice car, nice house, any of that. What matters is if you're happy and you're working toward the things that will make you happier, more fortunate. That's pretty much life in my opinion. Everyone has a different perception of that, and that's exactly that. Like if you're happy, if you're full of joy, and not like all the time, that's a whole nother conversation. But the idea of not being in a constant state of unhappiness, then like, you know what I mean? Like chase your goals, chase your dreams, and be confident in them. And it's a struggle. Like that's a whole nother conversation in itself as well.
Right.
Is the confidence that we need, the confidence that we should have, and what it does for you, and how it shapes a person and all that. But yeah.
Overall, man, I think we're wrapping up on time here. Any
2:57. Yeah. Thanks everyone for watching. Much appreciated.
Absolutely. This is ThinkAside, baby.
Yeah.
And we'll make you think aside more.
Awesome. Thanks. ThinkAside.